This is New York Truck Stop Radio, the voice of small business in New York City, with your hosts, Arthur and Zach Miller. Arthur Miller is a New York City attorney with more than 35 years' experience handling transportation issues and traffic tickets. Zach Miller is the publisher of NewYorkTruckStop.com. This radio program is your insider's guide to the legislation and political developments that affect your bottom line. Stay tuned for timely insight on current events in the trucking industry, commercial fleets, logistics, and more. Now, the voice of small business in New York City, here are Arthur and Zach Miller.
Hello, happy Saturday. Welcome to New York Truck Stop Radio, the voice of small business in New York, presented by NewYorkTruckStop.com and the law office of Arthur Miller. I'm Zach Miller.
And I'm Arthur Miller. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. So, really excited to have you guys with us today. Exciting show. We're joined today by Tiffany Donaldson, who is a small business and employment consultant and attorney, who's here to talk to us about all the fun it is to start and run your own small business here in the great state of New York and the great city of New York. Tiffany, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, I guess you could sort of chop your clients up into sort of three categories, right? You'd have those who are really looking to start a business,
correct,
those who just recently started a business, and people who've been running for a while.
And want to keep their
business. There you go.
Yeah, for the most part, I think that encompasses pretty much our business sectors until you get into, big business.
Right, yeah. Right. So what, I guess, when someone calls you, when either they're about to start or they recently started, what are their biggest concerns? What do you need to walk them through initially?
So when it comes to somebody who wants to actually form a business, which is the very first step, the number one thing that we discuss is how a business entity or structure can protect you and why you need one. Mm-hmm. And then the main three structures that you start with, they're either a corporation, which can be an S or a C, which are tax types, and then the LLC, which is a limited liability company. So what we do is people think that one's better than the other. I hear it every day. Every day. And the truth is that which is better for you depends on the type of business that you're going to start, whether you're starting kind of like real big and you're going to have employees, how many people you're starting with,
right,
and where, you wouldn't believe it, but where they live. Because if certain people live outside the country, you may not be able to use an S corporation, for example.
Wow.
So, everything that you think you know because your friend told you, that's what we discuss, but we discuss it with the law.
So, if you were going to hire programmers from India, you might not be able to do an S corporation.
Well, it's not necessarily that they work for you. It'd be more like if your partner
the ownership.
Gotcha.
So it's the ownership entity.
If they don't have a U.S. Citizenship or like green card, basically.
Right.
Even if they're here on a visa, they may not be able to be a member of a S corporation. So S corporation kind of gives some extra benefits to a company. There's a bit of tax savings. They don't have to pay the corporate level income tax, and that's what the benefit of the S is. For some reason, they don't want to extend that benefit to outsiders, and so they're forcing them to pick either the LLC or the C. So there's some really interesting. So it's down to who you are and what you're doing, and that's why I always encourage people to start with a small business attorney.
And if I may, but also, normally, and I'm sure you suggest that they also speak to their accountant, because they may have their own personal goals. They may have certain tax issues, let's say at home, which has a bearing on what how they handle their business. So that's something they have to really lay it all on the table, which I'm sure they do with you also. But it's always good to talk to an accountant, in that situation too.
I totally agree. I really encourage people to let me know who their accountant is and make sure we're on the same page when we form the entity, so that we're doing it with all the tax considerations in mind. Because really, people don't understand, but it really is sort of a tax-based decision.
Right.
The liability, the protection from the legal standpoint is the same from an LLC, the S, or the C. So the decision is, it is a very much tax-based decision.
So if I may, you mentioned the magic word, protection.
Yeah.
Because there are other issues, especially in this regulatory litigation environment that anybody that runs a business needs to do certain things to protect themselves. And one of the biggest and best things that anybody can do, whether you operate vehicles or some other kind of business, is have some sort of employee handbook. So is that's something that you work on as well?
Yes, for sure. So when I have clients that are coming in, they're either hiring for the first time or they've hired without an attorney,
Right.
which is usually actually more common. So don't feel bad if you've already hired and this is scaring you. Come on down. We help people like that all the time. So one of the main things that you want to think about when you're hiring, you want to think about 2 months in advance before you're going to do your first hire.
Wow.
You want to start getting your legal documents in place.
That's a great suggestion, right?
Yeah, this is because you need to register with different state agencies. For instance, you need to get your workers' comp insurance, you need to get your unemployment in place, and you need to get your disability insurance in place. These are things that you're going to need right away when you start employing. So it's better to quantify them, figure out how much this is going to cost you. The other thing that you want to do is you want to work on your employee handbook. Mm-hmm. So the employee handbook, I kind of think of it as, the rules of the road for your business. And you have one major opportunity to set them before your employees are driving your company's culture. And so really your actual company culture starts with the handbook. And what the handbook is to explain a little bit, is, we're all familiar with it. Most of us have gotten one. When
we have a manual for our cars, so why not a manual for the business?
Usually gigantic and really heavy. But for those listeners who are thinking about starting a business, the employee handbook is really there to protect the employer. The employees think, it's for them. It's given to them, but it's really there for the employer. And what it really contains is a lot of required disclosures. Some are federal and some are state level. That's why you want to work with somebody who's licensed in your state. I usually tell people to really, talk to somebody that down to your county or area, because there could be that specific rules that, someone from outside might not know. So that's how specific it is. So if you're just assuming you know it all, I would encourage you to talk to somebody, because I don't think any of us know it all. So the other things that go in there are the discipline policy.
Yeah,
and that's a hugely important thing. And I think it does protect the worker also, so they know what the ground rules are. But,
you know what I think? I think it protects the workers who aren't doing anything wrong. I think it protects. It protects the culture. Well, you use that great word, culture.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It protects the culture of the company, which is a big. It's huge. I mean, if your employees are waking up miserable going to work every day, they're going to be bad employees. The product is going to suffer. I mean,
you're going to have a lot of absences.
Exactly.
I mean, that's actually a perfect. So in an employee handbook, you would have the policy on absences, for example.
That's right. So that's one of the major considerations. So when we're drafting the handbook, we talk about what are the requirements? Mm-hmm. So if you wouldn't believe it, in New York, the requirements differ based on the size of the business, whether you're located inside or outside the city. So if even to know what leave you have to offer, honestly, you probably need a consultation, because it's down to the type of business you have. Mm-hmm. So once you figure out what the minimum is that you have to offer, which could be zero depending on the size of your business, then you need to figure out what you want to offer. And so why would you want to offer more than the minimum? To attract the best employees that you can, to keep up with what the market's offering. And one of the things everyone should be aware of is anything you put in writing that you disclose in your handbook, you're handing that out as an affirmative representation from your company. So one of the things I work with people on is keeping out of the handbook what maybe they shouldn't be making an affirmative declaration on, in case it's something you might want to change later. So, but we can get into that more if you want.
We're going to come back and talk that. But Tiffany, if you could please just give out your number and email address, so if anybody has any concerns, they could give you a call.
Oh, sure. So my phone number is, it's a DC area code. It's 301-332-2354. Don't worry, I'm in Dumbo, Brooklyn. My office is located at 155 Water Street, and my website is Attorney Law NY. My email is counsel, which is COUNSEL @DLCESQ.com.
Perfect. And we're just going to take a break. We're coming back with more Tiffany Donaldson on New York Truck Stop Radio.
If you run a small business in and around New York City, you've probably noticed that it's getting harder and harder every day to keep your business going and growing. I'm attorney Arthur Miller. For the past 30 years, I've been helping businesses, large and small, cut through the maze of tickets and government regulations, traffic tickets, parking tickets, and summonses issued to business owners and their commercial vehicles. I handle hundreds of tickets each week at the New York State Traffic Violations Bureau, Parking Violations Bureau, Oath, DOT, and local criminal courts throughout the tri-state region. Let's face it, if your drivers can't drive, if you can't keep your trucks on the road, you're out of business. I can help. Let me go to court for you. I'll handle the legal process so you can focus on running your business. I can even help you implement strategies to avoid tickets in the first place. I work with businesses of all sizes and types, including truck leasing firms, beverage and snack distributors, construction and service companies, bus operators, and many, many more. If your company is in trouble because of traffic or parking tickets or other notices of violation, call me right now for a free consultation. My offices are in Long Island City. Call me on my direct line, 718-997-0641. That's 718-997-0641. I can help your business in any of the 5 boroughs or the metropolitan region, and if I can't help you, I'll refer you to someone who can. At the end of the day, I'm a small business owner just like you. I know what you're going through, and I want to help. Please give me a call. Let's keep your business going in the right direction. Call me right now for your free consultation. Attorney Arthur Miller, 718-997-0641. Again, that's 718-997-0641.
Welcome back to New York Truck Stop Radio, the voice of small business in New York, presented by NewYorkTruckStop.com and the Law Office of Arthur Miller. You can give us a call, 718-997-0641, 718-997-0641. Zach, Z-A-C-H, at NewYorkTruckStop.com, Arthur at NewYorkTruckStop.com. And you know, speaking about truck stop, we're joined by small business consultant Tiffany Donaldson. Speaking about truck stops, I believe your father was very familiar with them, was he not?
Yeah, that's right. So my father was a car hauler. You know, he would drive all the way to California at times and come all the way back. And so we're very familiar with the trucking industry in my family.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
I mean, that's what we like to. Well, you know, I mean, even today, the truck driving is, I think, the most common job in, I think, half the states in the country. In New York State, about 1 in 26 jobs is in the trucking industry. They're not all drivers.
And as an aside, many businesses are looking for good drivers. It's a good profession. The money is decent. In many instances, you can come home every night.
Right.
It depends, and they need qualified people. And like your dad's situation, we were talking about. You know, sometimes if you are lucky enough you work with a family business, it could be a good job for life. And we know many who've sort of started out driving and then went into management. So it's a fascinating entree that doesn't necessarily require a big college.
No,
debt.
that's true. But I was going to say there is also something nice about sort of being on your own in the road and not, crammed in an office where, every day it seems like there's a new regulation on top of the office space.
That's right.
Which is why people need to call someone like you, Tiffany. But let's talk about one of the big ones that's been in the news the last couple of years and the state and city have made some serious changes to, and that's sexual harassment policy.
Yeah, that's right. So in 2018, New York State passed new legislation that required sexual harassment training to be taken by every employee in New York State. Mm-hmm. And so that came into implementation last year, but really we tried to get most people taking it last year, but this year seemed, if you missed it in 2019, it's an annual requirement. So you're always going to have missed it, but it's your chance to start getting on board in 2020. And they were saying, they're not necessarily going to penalize people too badly if you missed it last year because they didn't really do the best job getting the word out.
No.
But, now that it's 2020, I really don't think they're going to be up for hearing the excuses. They're going to expect you to be complying. So.
And you don't want to learn after getting a notice of violation and a fine.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. But it's more than training, right? Isn't it a little? It just seems like a harsher sort of. Maybe harsher is not the right word, but it does seem like they are really making a serious burden of proof on the employer to prove that sexual harassment didn't happen. as
Right.
opposed to no, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the legislation that passed in 2019. So they got strict in 2018. They got stricter in 2019, and so those regulations are coming into effect in 2020. That specific one in August. And so what they did is, it used to be, currently is, but won't be anymore in August. That if an employer actually had a policy where they could have their employee report internally that something was happening. If the employee didn't report, then they were going to, use that as an affirmative defense in court and say, well, they didn't report the harassment, and for a lot of cases were getting thrown out because the employees weren't following the internal rules. So what did the legislature do? The legislature just said, all right, you can no longer bring that affirmative defense. So even though they didn't report internally, it's no longer a reason that the employer shouldn't be held liable for the problem. So the employer's kind of down to one main defense, which is that the action or whatever happened was trivial or de minimis. But what if it wasn't, and the employer just had no knowledge of it?
Right.
They're limited in their defenses now.
That's a real scary thought.
But I can't fathom that. Like, how are you supposed to pre-know something was gonna happen? Like
but you need your policy. You need to have a policy in place. And you need a written policy, right? So the law requires that.
Yeah. So one of the new changes in the law from 2018 was that you now need to have a written policy, which we encourage you to put in the handbook, as we were talking about.
So all the more reason to have an employee handbook.
Yeah, and it's actually a specific model policy that they have. So generally, they really don't even want you making up your own policy. I would encourage people to follow the model policy, and there's also a written complaint form that you have to give them. You have to distribute it. So that's required as well. So what can happen to you if you don't follow these? Well, you can be reported on by your employees who are in the know. They've taken the training and they know what they're supposed to get, and they didn't get it. So they can report it up, and then after that you're going to be audited. You could get fines, and generally you're going to have to be required to provide it, but you could also be subject to other liabilities.
Right. So let me. Is there some sort of cutoff, but let's say for the size of the company that needs to have this, the sexual harassment policy, or I don't think there is. Is there?
That's an excellent question. So there used to be, and now as of 2020, there isn't. So if you have an employee, and I encourage people, if you are employed by your own S corp, if you get a W-2, you're an employee. So if you're an employee, you need to take the training.
So then, so to have the training, and then I suppose you can file a complaint against yourself, and
you can report yourself if you don't.
Well, this show got off the rails quickly. Let's try to get it back on track here, because there's something else. There's another change that they made.
I guess what we call gallows humor. So.
Yeah.
But
keep tying that noose. Something else that they changed, which we were talking about, which is really strange, is about, because we mentioned culture. It's also about contract. People who come into your facility are now you're responsible for them. Yeah,
so this is the other thing that when we teach the class, I mean, employers, they just start interrupting and making like outrageous comments. So what happened is they expanded employer liability widely in the legislature. When I say they, and what happens is now we pick on UPS, but it's a common example where, let's say, any package delivery service comes and that person interacts with people that are in your office every day. If that person takes sexually harassing actions towards any of your employees, as long as the employee, reports it up to you, and even that's, questionable at this point, you can be held liable for the harassment of the employee by an outsider because they were at your office.
And I feel like this is so indicative of the city and the state, well-intended, no doubt, but just not understanding basics of how businesses run, because the package delivery driver is not someone you choose. It's on the company to send, someone gets in the truck and that's who they send. It's not like the plumber or the electrician where you have a whole host of options and you, as the employer, decide, Joe's plumbing, that's who I'm hiring, that's who I'm bringing in. Joe's behavior is clearly on the employer because the employer chose Joe. The employer didn't choose Joe the UPS man. It's crazy that they would put it all together in a bundle like that.
And I think you're right. It either goes to them really not considering the finer points, which I'm going to lean for that one. The other option is that it's intentional, and they're just expanding the liability opportunities.
So
for
actually,
the
that's it.
employer.
So on a claim, does the state make any money if somebody's successful, or that all goes to the plaintiff?
Well, generally, the state is out to protect the plaintiff.
Right.
And it's the people that are making the money. It's the attorneys.
Yep.
It's the private attorneys that are making the money. So really, the state's putting money towards this. The only way that they're going to make money off of it is to come around and audit you. You didn't do the correct things, and they fine you. So it is. I do believe it's a way for the state to generate income. One of the things is that it's going to come around later after a couple years. Now you're out of compliance a couple years. Fee's probably going to be higher.
But this is,
Fascinating
but
point.
employers are easy targets for many things. And we didn't even talk about this, but there are lawyers that just specialize in bringing wage and hour cases or disability cases, and they have hundreds of them. And there's big money and big legal fees in there in that. And sometimes just a little slip up, or the employer had a relationship. Maybe they're paying somebody off the books and things like that, and can come back and bite them in a very expensive way.
It's big business,
Mm-hmm.
and
The litigation aspect, absolutely.
it's big business, and some attorneys that I've seen, they even seem predatory.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lot that are reputable and they're defending the little guy, and then there's some that just seem like they're setting people up. They're shopping for the right.
We see that in trucking as well.
Mm-hmm.
We see that too, where
Absolutely.
it's just like, it's one thing if a truck is the company and the driver is clearly behaving the way they shouldn't and agreed to have to stand up for people who they hurt. But there's some who they'll look at any truck and be like, "There's money there." It's pretty gross. And again, and this is sort of the thing, because we live in the culture down here is very much, I think, very far protecting the employee. Like, I think it's reasonable to protect the employee because the employer has the power, but I think things have gotten a little out of control the last couple of years around here.
Yeah, it turns out California and New York are actually in a contest to see who could have the most stringent sexual harassment policies. So New York came out with the training. So guess what? California 2020 training's now required in California. So
Oh my gosh.
I don't know what you can take away from that, but that's the status of the New York laws that they've passed. So that's what we're all operating under now.
We're definitely gonna have you back. There's so much more to talk about. One more time, just please give everyone your number and contact information, Tiffany.
Oh, sure. Thanks again for having me. My name is Tiffany
pleasure.
Donaldson. My office is called Donaldson Legal Counseling. My website is Attorney Law NY, also dlcesq.com. And my phone number is 301-332-2354.
Thank you. You guys are listening to New York Truck Stop Radio.
Thanks for listening to New York Truck Stop Radio. If you use trucks in connection with your business, if you have a fleet, or simply drive a truck, the law office of Arthur Miller is on your team. Call right now for a complimentary consultation, 718-997-0641. That's 718-997-0641. Or visit NewYorkTruckStop.com. That's NewYorkTruckStop.com. And join us every Saturday afternoon at 1 for New York Truck Stop Radio, the voice of small business in New York City. Right here on AM 970, The Answer. This program furnished by Truck Stop Enterprises, LLC.